What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Stanley Phillies Sports History for October 25th, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Well, I could sit here and tell you it's going to be okay. It's not. This sucks. It absolutely stings. I mean, you play all year, you get hyped up, you get excited, especially in baseball because it's such a long season, and to go out that way absolutely sucks. And all year, runners in scoring position is what killed them. And we've talked about it a lot on this podcast. And ultimately, the past four of the last 5 games, ultimately, that's what killed them. Hitting with runners in scoring position, not getting the runs in, and the bats all going cold at the same time. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the pitching was solid for the Phillies. I mean, Ranger came out and did well. Hoffman did well. I mean, Wheeler did well when he came in. Alvarado. It's just one of those things. I mean, you give up 4 runs with the way this offense is, you expect to win. So we go on another season without a World Series. I will say I think this team will be back. I know that doesn't really mean much now, but most of this team will be back. I think the only free agents are Reese, Nola, Kimbrel, and Lorenzen. Kimbrel definitely won't be back. Nola, I don't know if the price is right, maybe, but I mean, he's getting up there, and I mean, he's even during the regular season, he's inconsistent. Reese, I think it would be a good story, but to be completely honest, where is he going to play? We have a large contingent of outfielders, so if Bryce goes back to right, then Schwarber's the DH, and then you have Marsh, Castellanos, and Johan. So I don't know if there's a spot for him. I don't know whether Reese stays or Bryce stays at first. Just lots of question marks for this team moving forward. One thing they do have is the influx of outfielders that maybe they could make a trade for a pitcher. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe Lorenzen can come back cheaper. He's young. There's a lot of question marks. I mean, it just stinks, and it's hard to kind of really deal with that now. I think even for arbitration, I think it's only Ranger and Sir Anthony. So we'll see what happens. Not really thinking about the offseason yet. Need a day to just kind of digest and reflect, but just a shitty way to end the season. Second time in less than 6 months that a Philly team blew a 3-2 series lead, only to lose the next 2 games. Sixers, remember that. Eagles blew a 10-point lead. So, I mean, I don't know. It's all too raw right now. Again, don't want to go with the old Philly versus new Philly thing, but this feels very much like an old Philly kind of moment, and I definitely think it ranks up there in the most epic collapses in not only Philly but Philadelphia sports history. But we move on. I will say I do like the fact, and there's a lot of times after a game like this, you see the players and they're just kind of like, whatever. I'm gonna go to my offseason home and enjoy it. And I mean, you can tell that these guys like Castellanos, Schwarber. I mean, Schwarber apparently apologized to Middleton for it. But Harper, those guys genuinely feel bad that they not only they lost, but they let the city down, and they mentioned that, and the fans down. So I think not that, and maybe this is the Philly fan in me coming out, and I don't know, like I want you to feel as bad as I do as my player. But there is something to that, the fact that they are feeling the same way we are, and it makes it. I mean, you get it. I mean, it's baseball and it's frustrating, but I guess because we like these guys, it's somewhat different. I'm thinking a la the 93 Phillies, minus maybe Mitch Williams, who people really gave him the business. But, I mean, ultimately it falls on those guys, Schwarber, Turner, Castellanos, and Bryce. I mean, they didn't really do shit. Absolute shit in the past 2 or 3 games. And, I mean, that ultimately is where. I mean, Bryce came close a couple times, and he admitted he just missed. I mean, so it's frustrating, especially when you had such high hopes for this team. But congrats to the Diamondbacks. I'm not going to be like, I hope you lose. But we move on. It's going to be a very long, interesting offseason. And again, this one stings, and it almost to me kind of stings a lot more than, believe it or not, the Eagles losing the Super Bowl last year. But tell me what you think about that. So now that October is over, it's a blue October now, or green if you want. Go to phillygoat.com. You've been stocking up on the Phillies stuff. Go check out their Eagles, Union, Sixers, and Flyers stuff. Still the same promo code, Jim Montgomery, 10% off, but time to move on to some Eagles stuff. They have some new Eagles Kelly Green gear that just came out. Flyers have been playing very good to start the season as a young team, so I'm telling you, jump on their bandwagon now. Go to phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right, speaking of those Flyers, tough one last night out in Vegas, late one. They lost 3-2. They had a 2-1 lead, and then gave up 2 goals in the third period. This is one of those things you expect from a young team, especially against the defending Stanley Cup champions. But they played them tough, went toe-to-toe with them out in Vegas, and you got to like that fight in them. Hopefully this is something that's getting them battle-tested moving forward. But 3-2 loss to the Golden Knights last night. But another strong performance. They are playing with, like I said, a lot of fight and getting stuff out there. So be sure to go to Philly Goat and support your Flyers. All right. Sixers news. I guess you could call it news. There's rumors that the Knicks really want Joel Embiid. And I shouldn't say all of a sudden coming out. There have been rumors that the Knicks were interested in adding Joe, and all of a sudden now they had and this is a strategic leak. I know this, but basically they're offering Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, Evan Turner, Mitchell Robinson, some combination, I think, of 2 or 3 of them and 2 or 3 first-round picks for Joe. And that's all well and good, but I mean, how good are those picks going to be if you're trading for Joe? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me right now for the Sixers to do that, especially with the season starting tomorrow. I just thought that was, I don't know, it's kind of like a Daryl Morey type trade. Like, here, we'll give you all these guys, and I don't know the contract situations or anything like that, but I think at that point you're basically re-tanking. But we'll see how the Sixers or the season plays out for the Sixers. But I just thought that was interesting and just like a rumor going around. And on the surface, I'm like, no, like I would not do that trade. But I mean, again, 3 months from now, I might be like, yeah, who knows? And I'm being clouded right now by the Phillies, so I don't want to say something stupid. But that was the trade. That was the big Sixers news yesterday. Still no update on Harden and whether he'll be in Milwaukee tomorrow night or not. I'm leaning toward probably not, but we'll see. Be sure to check out this week's Back to the Future. We did our Sixers preview. They tip off tomorrow. Also looked at the legacy of Dr. J and did a little look at some issues in the current state of college sports again. When certain things come up, I like to cover that because I like college sports too. But go check out Back to the Future. That's Back to the Future with a PH. We'll be dropping a new episode this week. Not sure which way I'm going to go yet because I was holding out this for scheduling because of the World Series and whether it was going to be a World Series preview. But stay tuned for that. New Back to the Future will be out this week at some point. So definitely feeling horrible about the Phillies. But one thing that's not horrible, the back of your car might be horrible because of your kids. But one thing to help you with that is carcan.com. Carcan, it's basically a trash can. It fits right on the back of your seat. Kids can just throw their trash in it, empty it. It's reusable. I believe on the website they have bags if you want to do that. Don't want to use it as a trash can. It can be storage for coloring books and things like that when you go on long trips. Get 2 of them. Use one for storage. One can be a cooler. It's waterproof so that it's not going to leak or anything like that. Puts juice boxes, some bottles of water, whatever you need to get through that trip. don't have kids but still want to organize your car or get a car cam for your car, they have other options that don't fit on the back of your seat, other ways to help organize your car. Go to carcan.com, look at their wide selection of organization and just ways to keep your car tidy and neat and keep you from littering. Carcan.com, use the promo code Jim Montgomery 20 off for 20% off of your order. It makes a great gift. Buy in bulk and get even more of a discount. Carcan.com. It's almost going to be holiday shopping season, so be sure to check it out. All right, so yesterday I did kind of give you a peek behind the curtain and tell you kind of some of my thought process. I did call an audible, and for the first time in the history of this podcast, I am going to repeat the same thing that I did last year. But as you know, October of last year versus October of this year, this podcast is completely different. So it definitely is going to look a little different, but I needed some positivity in my life today. So instead of talking about a random Eagles game in 1981, which kind of led to the crappy rest of the season, we are going to go with the Eagles, but today we're going to go back to 1987, and on this day back in 1987, the Eagles beat the Cowboys 37-20, but this was no ordinary game. This was the first game that the Eagles regular players came back after that famous players strike where 1 week of the season was lost, and then there was 3 games with replacement players, loosely used as the basis for the movie The Replacement. Of course, the Cowboys being the Cowboys, some of their key players did not show solidarity with the players' union and cross the picket line to keep sharp and get some work in. Tony Dorsett, Danny White, Randy Cross to be 3 of them. Buddy Ryan basically was the coach of this team, second year as a coach, and told his players, I don't care what you do, but make sure you do it all together. And I really, Buddy gets a bad rap about a lot of things, but I really think this was a cool move by him. Hey, if you guys want to cross, but all of you cross. You want to not cross and strike, all of you do it. And they all chose to strike, and I think that obviously was the right move, especially in a city like Philly that has a huge union presence. But in the first game they played with the replacement players, Tom Landry, according to Buddy Ryan, ran up the score. I believe it was 41 to something with Danny White, Tony Dorsett, and those guys getting some reps. I know that I went down a rabbit hole before the Phillies game looking at this last night, and a lot of the Dallas media at the time, I went back, I have a newspapers.com account, so if you guys say I don't do my research, yes, I trust me. So I went back and basically they were ripping Buddy for it and saying, well, they didn't really run up the score. They didn't score any fourth quarter points in that first game. But, I mean, the message was sent. Tom Landry ran up the score and wanted to keep his players sharp and whatnot. And to top it off, the Eagles' replacement players were terrible. They were just not – Buddy didn't really coach him. He was just whatever. I think there was 3,000 fans for the home games. It was just bad. But back to this game. The strike ended. The Eagles came out fired up because they loved Buddy Ryan. We've talked a lot about that over the course of both podcasts. And they played hard for him. They came out fired up and played hard. They took it to the Cowboys that day in honor of their coach and what Tom Landry did to him, whether or not he did or he didn't. The evidence would kind of support that he could have probably run up the score more if he wanted to, but the Eagles' replacement players were terrible. But the Eagles were up 30-20 late in the game. All they had to do was kneel on the ball. They allegedly looked like they were going to take a knee. Randall faked the knee spike and then threw deep to the end zone. Mike Quick drew a pass interference penalty, giving the Eagles the ball on the 1-yard line. Keith Byers ran it in. Buddy Ryan got his revenge, running up the score. It was Eagles 37, Dallas 20. Tom Landry was pissed. I believe this was his last year as coach of the Cowboys anyway, because Jimmy Johnson came in 88. But this ultimately reignited the hatred and the rivalry. This whole fiasco reignited the hatred for the Cowboys from Eagles fans. And I think it's the reason where it is today. It had kind of died off after the Eagles sort of died off after the Super Bowl run. But ultimately, the Eagles-Cowboys rivalry, I would say, goes back obviously for years. But I think this is where today, where we're at with the hatred for the Cowboys still stems right from this game, because then from there, the Eagles went on to dominate the Cowboys over the next 3 or 4 or 5 seasons. Jimmy Johnson saw that and it kind of stuck in his craw, and then he made it a point to really kind of rub it in and ignite the rivalry that way on his end. Then you go into Andy Reid, and this is kind of where we are today. But I think that dominance of the Cowboys in the late 80s with that was Reggie White's defense led to Jimmy Johnson wanting nothing more than to build a winner. Obviously, he wanted to build a winner, but like really get back. And when they finally started beating the Eagles, that was a big deal for those Cowboy teams as they were taking the jump into being one of those elite teams. But on this day, Randall Cunningham did the fake kneel down, threw it deep, drew the pass interference penalty. Keith Byers took it in. Eagles beat the Cowboys 37-20. Buddy Ryan got his revenge on Tom Landry for running up the score with his replacement players. Back in 1987 during that player strike, which the movie The Replacements is loosely based off of. All right. Going to our Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame coverage. We're inching ever so close to that induction ceremony on November 2nd. There are still tickets available. If you want to get tickets, they have a couple different options. Go to PhiladelphiaSportsHallOfFame.org. That'll also give you access to look at this year's induction class as well as the 20 for 20. If you want more information on the Hall of Fame itself, how you can help them out, or list of previous inductees, go to phillyhall.org. 2 separate websites. Each one has a different kind of purpose. All right, today we're going to focus on 2023 inductee James Isaminger. He is the Legacy of Excellent Award winner for this year. He spent 35 years as a Philadelphia sports writer. He was at the Philadelphia North American from 1905 to 1925. From there, he went to the Inquirer. He had some nationally known columns, though. Tips from the Sporting Ticker and Under the Spotlight were nationally syndicated columns that he did. And I did some research. I could not find an example of one, albeit because I was trying to get some of the stuff done before the Phillies game. But if you want to look them up, Tips from the Sporting Ticker and Under the Spotlight, just to get a sense on how the sports writers were back in the day. He was the president of the Baseball Writers Association of America in 1934. Remember, those are the ones who are responsible for the Hall of Fame vote. He was the editor and author of the Reach Annual Baseball Guide from 1928 to 1939. That was a big deal, especially in the Philadelphia area. Just a place to get all the stats and kind of prepare for what the upcoming seasons were. He covered every World Series from 1905 to 1939. That's pretty impressive. It's 35 years. Pretty cool there. He was a Baseball Hall of Fame J.G. Taylor Spink Award winner in 1974, so he is in the Hall of Fame in like the writers' wing. He's not a Hall of Famer. He's in the Hall of Fame in the writers' wing. I always have to make sure we keep that distinction out. But he is probably best known for being the reporter who broke the 1919 Black Sox scandal. He did some investigative work and really dug in and exposed what was happening with that 1919 scandal. And if you know the movie, if it's 8 Man Out or 9 Man Out, where they kind of cover this, where basically the players on the White Sox took bribes from bookies to throw the World Series that year. All of them were banned. Famously, Shoeless Joe Jackson was one of them who, ironically enough, if he did take the money, he had one hell of a World Series by throwing it. But all of that was uncovered by James Isaminger, who is this year's Legacy of Excellent inductee into the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. So congratulations to the family of James Isaminger, long overdue. One of the probably the first real big name, I would say, sports specifically baseball sports writers, and obviously spent a long time here in Philly, one of the best to ever do it. So congrats to you and your family. All right, on this day, back in 1987, the Eagles beat the Cowboys 37-20 when Randall Cunningham fake kneeled it through deep, got a pass interference, and the Eagles ran up the score, enacting some revenge on the Cowboys for their coach, Buddy Ryan. Sixers tip off tomorrow. Hopefully that'll help. Nah, it won't. I'm not even going to pretend like it's going to help take the sting off of the Phillies. But lots of questions going into this offseason. As I sort of digest this more, I'll have more on the Phillies themselves and kind of where they stand and what's going to happen. But for now, let's just wallow in our misery. Take a day. Just be miserable. Kind of mourn the loss of this season. And then starting tomorrow, we move on because we have the Sixers. And then we got a big Eagles game coming up this weekend against Washington. But this sucks, man. It absolutely sucks. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Wednesday. And I feel your pain. Until next time, I feel your pain. I'll see you when I see you.